One day, a donkey fell down a well. It kicked and brayed and made an awful noise until the farmer came out to see what was going on. And he looked down the well and he saw the donkey and he thought, how the heck am I going to get this donkey out of the well? And he thought about it and thought about it. And the more he thought about it, he realized he wasn't going to get a chance to get the donkey out of the well. So he thought, the well's dangerous, the donkey's old, I'm going to fill it in. So he called his neighbours over to help fill the well in. And they got their spades out and they were shoveling dirt into the well, and the donkey realised what was happening. Of course, kicked up another hell of a racket. But they just kept on shoveling. Shovel, shovel, shovel. Then suddenly, all was quiet in the well. And they looked over. And what they saw amazed them. With every shovel load of dirt they had thrown in, the donkey had stamped its foot on the ground, and thereby with each load of dirt, the ground had become higher and higher and higher. So they kept on shoveling, they get faster and faster and faster, until eventually the donkey was able to stamp enough dirt on the ground to get out of the well and walk away. I kind of like this story because it equates to my life with HIV over the last 30 years. My donkey in the well was being diagnosed in 1984 with HIV. 1984 with HIV was a death sentence. Of course, this caused panic and hysteria amongst the general population, which was only fueled by the media. And this unfortunately created widespread discrimination and stigma, which in some cases still exists today. So as I sat in my doctor's surgery, you can imagine how I felt. I felt like I was falling down an endless black pit. And as I was falling, there were these thoughts of fear, anger, disbelief, denial, whirling around in my head. But somewhere really deep down was this little voice that said, no. No, you are not going to die from AIDS. It will not kill you. And I stamped my hand on my doctor's desk and I said, I am not going to die from AIDS. It will not kill me. And I truly believe that those positive words set up a mindset that kept me strong through the long, dark years that were to come. Of course, I knew that mere words alone weren't going to keep me alive, so I had to think of a plan to help myself. And I thought long and hard about it, and I came up with a little naive plan. Very simple plan, but it worked for me. First of all, diet. I changed my diet. Not terribly much, because I was never into junk food. I was never into bad food, but I added more salads, I added more raw vegetables, poultry. I cut out red meat. Awful thing, I cut out alcohol. That was very hard for me. And I took up supplements. I had so many supplements. I spent most of my wage on supplements. For example, there was one supplement, and I don't know if any of you here have heard of it today, is royal jelly. And royal jelly back then was prohibitively expensive, and I'm sure it still is. It was supposed to last a month. Not with me, it lasted a week. I was just scooping it down. But I kept on taking the vitamins, and I really believe they helped me. I also took up meditation, and part of my mantra was, My immune system is strong and healthy. My immune system is strong and healthy. And I would say this over and over again while I was meditating. I'd meditate for about 20 minutes in the morning and about 10 minutes at night. And when I was walking to work, I'd say that too. In my mind, I'd be going, my immune system is strong and healthy. My immune system is strong and healthy. I also took up exercise, talking about walking. I went to the gym and had a vigorous exercise program, which I really and truly believe is a key to my survival. And another interesting thing I did was visualization. I took a piece of cardboard about that size. In the center I drew a black dot, which represented the virus. And around it I drew hundreds of green circles, which represented my immune system overpowering the virus. Then around that I drew a circle of red hearts for love. Love of myself, love of my friends, and love of life. Then around that I drew another yellow circle, which was for health, happiness, and the sun, which represented strength. Now I put this on the wall opposite my bed, so it was the first thing I saw in the morning when I got up and the last thing at night when I went to bed. Now I really believe this was a very powerful thing, because that image was in my mind all day long too. Not all the time, but I'd be casting back to it, I would see it. I'd see that the virus being overcome by my immune system. And I really believe the power of the mind is a very, very strong thing. And the last thing I did was humor. I mean, I have a weird sense of humor, as a lot of people here know. But at that time, because there was so much negativity, so much hatred, I decided that I was going to not watch TV, the news on TV. I was not going to buy newspapers, because every day there was something more and more about AIDS and people dying from AIDS. Rock Hudson has AIDS. It was horrible, so I'm cutting it out. And what I did, if there was nothing on TV that was funny, I would go to the video shop and get my favorite videos out. For example, Faulty Towers. I think I've seen that 1,000 times. I just love it. I can never see it often enough. And there were other videos too. So I added humor to the mix. And this worked for me for many years, this little naive plan. My CD4 count was healthy, I was healthy, but it was hard standing by and seeing my friends and colleagues falling ill and dying. I remember one New Year's Eve, we were sitting on the balcony overlooking the city at New Year's Eve, watching the fireworks. We'd all lost someone that year. A friend had just lost his lover the week before. It was a very, very somber evening, and I remember thinking, will this ever end? And of course, it didn't. It just kept on going. So I fled the death. I thought I did. I fled the death, and I took a job in Melbourne. That was the worst thing I ever did. Not because of Melbourne, I love Melbourne, but it was because I was working in a poisonous and horrible atmosphere. And it wasn't too long before my CD4 count plunged to 220. Now, I'm sure all of you people here know about the CD4 count, and do you all know about the CD4 count and when it plunges to below 200? Yes? No. Back then, if you had a CD4 count of less than 200, you were considered to have full-blown AIDS. So you can imagine how I panicked when I had 220. I freaked. So I resigned my job and I came back to Sydney. And I was extremely lucky to have a dear friend called Brett Tyndall, who got me an appointment with David Cooper. Now, from here on in, it's a long, long story. These years are very long and very complicated, and I won't bore you with them all today, but I'll just let you know that I went on 28 drug trials between the time I started seeing David and now. All of them had hideous side effects, that some of them still remain with me today. I'll talk about three because three are particularly revolting. The first is ritonavir. I went on the first trial of ritonavir in Sydney, and it was a liquid form. And we had to take 1,200 mils twice a day. And initially, it tasted like cherry, wish it had done. It tasted like cherry cough medicine. But 2 seconds later, my lips went tingly, my tongue felt like it was twice its size. I felt nauseous, I felt hot. I felt very, very sick. And because it was a double-blind trial, no one knew that they were getting the real thing or not. Well, I rang Andrew and said to him, Andrew, I said, I feel very sick. And he said, well, I think you've got the real thing. So I put up with ritonavir. I put up with those symptoms for the whole time I was on the trial. They never went away. Worse than that, they had me in hospital with excruciating migraine headaches. I was in hospital sometimes for 10, 12 days at end on a morphine drip because I was so sick. Then came the vomiting, and for me that was the end. I could time it. I would have a meal, and 20 minutes later I would be sick. So I thought, I haven't got any quality of life, so ritonavir went out the door. Then there was T20. The lovely T20. I didn't think there would be anything worse than ritonavir, but T20 took the cake. It's a self-injecting drug, and that didn't worry me, surprisingly enough. That was fine, but where the needle went in was the problem. It left a little lump as big as a fingernail or as big as a fist. And they were hot, hard, and they hurt like hell. And this went on for 2 years. I was on this trial for 2 years. And in the end, there was nowhere in my body I could find a spot to put a needle in. So we gave up T20. David was very reluctant to do this because he was worried that my viral load would come back again. But thankfully it didn't. Now I need to go back to the beginning because there was one drug I've forgotten to talk about, and that was DDI. How could I forget DDI? DDI came in a tablet that big and about that thick, and you had to take 2 a day, 2 twice a day, and there were only 2 ways you could take it. You could put it in your mouth and chew it, which was awful, or you could mix it up with a little bit of water and swallow it. Either way was indescribably vile. Again, nausea, vomiting, peripheral neuropathy, all these symptoms came back. So mercifully that one went out the window too pretty quickly. So those were 3 drugs that I was on, and they were horrible. And now today I am blessed with another side effect of another drug that was associated with my regime of ritonavir. I was on a drug called darunavir, and I remember signing a form or being told that there was a 1 in a billion chance that I'd get bleeding on the brain. Well, who wouldn't sign a form, or who wouldn't agree to 1 in a billion? Easy. Guess who got the 1 in the billion? Me. I've got superficial siderosis, and that's bleeding on the cerebellum, which is going to cause problems down the track worse than HIV. So it's ironic, isn't it? 30 years later, I don't have to worry about HIV, but I've got something now that's actually worse than HIV. But them's the breaks, so you just got to roll with them. That was that then. We now, in 2013, we now have drugs that work. Drugs that don't have side effects, drugs that are easy to take. People who are infected nowadays only need to take 1 drug or maybe 2 a day. What we need to do, we need to get people tested, because there are people out there who have HIV who don't know they have HIV, and they are infecting other people. We need to get everyone in to get tested, so if they turn out to be positive, they can start taking the drugs and lead a healthy life, because people today who are diagnosed HIV have a reasonable chance of living exactly the same life as someone who's not HIV positive. But they must come and be tested. And this is a really big drive at the moment, and something I'm passionate about. My journey through HIV has been challenging, interesting. I've met people I never would have met had I not been HIV positive. I've seen bravery that I would never have seen from my friends who have died. And I believe that I have the best health system in the world looking after me. I have the best people looking after me. I have David Cooper, Professor David Cooper, Professor Bruce Brew, Stephanie Wilson, my very good GP, Dr. Andrew Gowers, and all the wonderful team at IBAC. They've all looked after me, and I owe them a great debt of gratitude. And I feel lucky. I feel lucky to be standing up here today talking to you about my journey through HIV. But most of all, I feel lucky to be able to tell you that I have done what I said to the doctors I would do 30 years ago. I haven't died from AIDS. It didn't kill me. Thank you.